The annual Harrington Charity Gala was the most prestigious event of the season, and my family treated it like a coronation. The Grand Meridian Ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and the soft glow of candlelight reflecting off diamonds and gold. 800 guests filled the room, senators and CEOs, socialites and philanthropists, the entire upper crust of Manhattan society. And at the center of it all, seated at the head table like royalty surveying their kingdom, sat the Harrington family. My father, Christopher Harrington, the CEO of Harrington Industries, and the man who had built a fortune on the principle that sentiment was weakness. My mother, Emily Harrington, the perfect society wife, draped in pearls and practiced sympathy. My older sister, Viola Harrington, the heiress apparent, whose sharp tongue was legendary in social circles. And me, Sophia Harrington, the youngest, the invisible one, the daughter who had learned long ago that being seen and being valued were not the same thing. I was seated at the edge of the table. As always, the seat assigned to me was the one farthest from my father, closest to the service door. I had worn a navy gown while Viola shimmered in crimson. I had smiled when my mother introduced Viola to the governor's son, and ignored me entirely. I had clapped when my father announced the Harrington Foundation's latest initiative, a scholarship fund that was mostly a tax shelter with good press. I was used to being invisible. I had spent 24 years practicing. The awards ceremony began. The host, a polished woman with a television anchor smile, took the stage. The presentations were the usual fare, awards for corporate philanthropy, for community leadership, for the kind of generosity that came with naming rights and tax deductions. My father received his plaque with a humble smile that fooled absolutely no one. And then the host's tone shifted. "Tonight," she announced, her voice resonant in the silent hall, "we have a very special honoree, a young man who, tragically, passed away in an accident. But before he closed his eyes for the last time, he made a choice. He chose to donate all of his organs. And because of that final gift, the children standing beside me tonight are alive." She gestured, and 10 children walked onto the stage. They were of different ages, different races, different backgrounds, but they all shared the same luminous, grateful expression. They were alive because someone had died. They were breathing because a stranger had given them the ultimate gift. The audience applauded. My family did not. Viola leaned toward me, her crimson lips curving into a sneer. I wonder what kind of fool would waste their entire life just for a few words of posthumous fame. Beside her, my mother placed a delicate hand on her chest, her expression one of practiced, exaggerated pity. Torn apart like that, how can his soul ever rest? His parents must be heartless to allow such a thing. My father didn't bother with pity. He turned to his executive assistant, seated behind him, and muttered in a low, cold voice, "Find out whose child this is. Cancel all our contracts with them immediately. We don't do business with people who make spectacles of themselves in public." The assistant nodded and pulled out her phone. I sat frozen, my hands clasped in my lap, my heart pounding. I knew something they didn't. I had known for 3 hours, and I had said nothing. The host's voice rang out again, cutting through the murmurs. "Now, please join me in welcoming the parents of this generous young man to the stage, Christopher and Emily Harrington." The name echoed through the silent ballroom like a gunshot. My father's face went gray, and my mother's hand froze on her chest. Viola's sneer vanished, replaced by a dawning, horrific comprehension. 800 heads swiveled toward our table. 800 pairs of eyes fixed on the Harrington family. "Christopher and Emily Harrington," the host repeated, her smile unwavering. "Please come up. The parents of Peter Harrington, who saved 10 lives with his final gift." Peter Harrington, my brother, the brother I had loved in secret, mourned in silence, and never spoken of because my family had erased him long before he died. Peter had been born with a congenital heart defect. He had spent most of his short life in hospitals, his body too frail for the sports my father had demanded, his mind too gentle for the cutthroat world my family inhabited. My father had called him defective. My mother had called him a trial. Viola had called him the embarrassment. And when Peter had died in a car accident 6 months ago, my family had buried him in a private ceremony with no obituary, no announcement, no acknowledgement that he had ever existed. But Peter had made a choice before he died. He had signed an organ donor card. He had told the doctors he wanted to give whatever he could to whoever needed it. And I had been the one who held his hand in the hospital when he signed the papers. I had been the one who promised him his gift would not go unrecognized. I had kept that promise that I had called the hospital, that I had called the organ procurement organization, that I had called the Gala coordinator. And I had made sure that tonight, in front of 800 of the most powerful people in the world, Peter Harrington would be remembered. My father stood up. His face was white, his hands trembling, and my mother rose beside him, her expression a mask of shock and horror. Viola remained seated, her mouth hanging open, her perfect composure shattered. I stood too, not to join them, to watch. My parents walked toward the stage like condemned prisoners marching to the gallows. The applause that greeted them was not the polite, restrained applause of a gala audience. IT was thunderous. It was cathartic. IT was the sound of 800 people honoring a boy my family had tried to erase. The host handed my father the microphone. Mr. Harrington, would you like to say a few words about your son? My father stared at the microphone as if it were a live grenade. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. For the first time in his life, Christopher Harrington had nothing to say. My mother was crying real tears, not the delicate, performative kind she used at funerals. Her mascara was running, her hands were shaking. The audience, misinterpreting her grief as sorrow, applauded even louder. I walked toward the stage. I didn't ask permission. I took the microphone from my father's unresisting hand and turned to face the crowd. My brother Peter, I said, was the kindest person I have ever known. He was born with a heart that was too weak to sustain him, but too big to ever stop loving. He spent his life being told he was a burden by the very people who should have loved him most. And when he died, those same people tried to erase him, an obituary, and a memorial. No acknowledgement that he had ever existed. The ballroom was silent. My father had gone very still. My mother had stopped crying. Viola was staring at me with naked hatred. But Peter made a choice. He chose to save lives. He chose to give his heart, his lungs, his kidneys, his liver, everything he had, to strangers who needed them. He chose to be remembered not as a Harrington, but as a human being. And tonight, these 10 children stand here because of him. I turned to face my family. My father called Peter's existence a public spectacle. He ordered his assistant to cancel contracts with anyone associated with tonight's honoree. He didn't know the honoree was his own son, because he had already forgotten his son existed. The silence was absolute. I turned back to the crowd. The Harrington Foundation will be making a donation tonight, not to a scholarship fund, not to a tax shelter, to the families of these children, to the organ procurement organization that made Peter's gift possible, and to every hospital that treats children with congenital heart defects. This is what the Harrington name will stand for now, because I'm the one who controls it. My father lunged toward me, but 2 security guards intercepted him. Sophia, what are you doing? This is my company, my foundation. No, father. The foundation was always in Peter's name. He signed the papers before he died, and I'm the executor of his estate. The Harrington Foundation belongs to Peter. And Peter belongs to the people he saved. The applause that followed was the loudest sound I had ever heard. My father was escorted from the stage, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. My mother stumbled after him, still weeping. Viola was the last to leave, her crimson dress catching the light, her eyes burning with hatred. I stayed on the stage with the 10 children who were alive because of my brother. I held their hands. I told them Peter's story, and I promised them that his gift would never be forgotten. The aftermath was swift and merciless, M.Y. father tried to contest Peter's will, but the documents were ironclad. The Harrington Foundation was restructured as the Peter Harrington Organ Donation Fund, dedicated to supporting families of organ donors and recipients. M.Y. father was removed from his position. My mother divorced him within a year, taking half of what remained of his fortune. Viola was disinherited and moved to Los Angeles, where she tried and failed to become an influencer. The last I heard, she was working at a Sephora and telling anyone who would listen about the sister who had stolen her legacy. I run the foundation now that I visit hospitals, that I speak at schools, that I tell Peter's story to anyone who will listen. And every year, at the Harrington Charity Gala, we bring 10 new children onto the stage, and we celebrate the boy who saved them. Not revenge, remembrance. And the brother they erased became the legacy they couldn't destroy.